Behavioral Health Today, a podcast by Triad Behavioral Health covering trending topics in behavioral and mental health. This podcast is designed to share unique and relevant topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a mental health perspective. Due to the sensitive nature of today's topic, discretion is advised for younger listeners.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Dr. Graham Taylor, and today I'm joined by Gerry Grossman. Gerry has successfully trained thousands of exam candidates for the licensing exams, as he is the founder of Gerry Grossman Seminars and part of the Triad family. In 2016, he was recognized as the Educator of the Year by the AamFT in California, and in 2019 received a Lifetime Achievement Award from Open Paths Counseling Center, which is a Los Angeles-based community counseling center. He is currently serving as the CASA for a child in the foster care system. In his private practice, Gerry specializes in hypnosis and working with young children and their families. In 2020, he successfully lobbied a bill that has helped change the legal landscape for mental health providers doing therapy with minors in California. Today, Gerry joins us to speak on his experience and the lessons learned from successfully advocating change, specifically addressing the process of advocating for a change in the law in California. Gerry, welcome to Behavioral Health Today.
Well, thank you very much, Graham. It's a pleasure being here.
It is really nice to have you. You know, Gerry, I know that as practitioners, our ethics encourage us to be aware of current as well as emerging laws that pertain to the interest of the public that we serve. Would you start us out today by sharing how you focused your advocacy on an inequity that you saw in the law that impacted the teens being treated in therapy in California?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. California law required mental health professionals to respond to different forms of consensual sexual activity involving minors in a different manner. Mm-hmm. And therapeutic conversations regarding consensual penis-vagina intercourse involving minors within a legally defined age range required confidentiality, whereas discussions pertaining to consensual oral and anal sex involving minors within the same age range required a mandatory report to a child protective agency. So this legal formulation was particularly discriminatory to gay youth and criminalized these acts of consensual sexual activity.
What type of position would that put you in then, Gerry, if you were working with a teen and they began to, or open enough and willing enough to trust you to share that for them there might have been a consensual oral and anal sex going on within there? That would put you in a very challenging position at that point, wouldn't it?
It would. So what would happen is, as a practitioner, I would have to make a choice. Yeah. Do I want to follow the law? Mm-hmm. And it is a mandate that I would follow the law, which could in fact negatively impact my therapeutic relationship. Or I could not follow the law, maintain the confidences that the minor was divulging to me. And then what would happen is I would potentially be exposed to liability for not following the law.
Right. So this is a really challenging position that we can find ourselves in as practitioners. So you, around 2006, there was something about this issue, this inequity here that had to be addressed. Talk about what you decided to do.
Well, I became aware of this issue and I knew I wanted to change the law because I viewed it as blatantly discriminatory. Yeah. And in fact, others in the past had tried to change the law, but it hadn't been successful. So around 2009, 2010, I organized a group of therapists, and there was a real energized group of colleagues. Cio Hernandez, Angela Khan, Mike DePinto, Joel Landris, among others. And being that this is the fall that we're recording this and it's football season, I'm going to go with a football analogy here.
Good. I like it.
We had fielded a team and proposed language for potential legislation was crafted. And I served as the bullhorn for this team. And I would raise this issue at various CAMF annual meetings, local CAMF meetings, BBS meetings, because I knew it was really important to increase awareness of this issue in the therapeutic community.
As you're talking about it right there, you're starting to talk about we need to put a team together. And I know that contacting other professionals for support, as well as I'm sure emailing legislators and others, is really a necessary part of gaining the support. Give me a sense of how you reached out to other folks in this process.
Okay, well, one of the things I did, I emailed the newly installed executive director, Kim Madsen, and I requested that this issue be put on the May 2010 BPS agenda. So my intention was to mobilize an army of therapists to attend the meeting.
Yeah.
So she responded to me an email and said, "Do you recall the author of the bill or the bill number?" And it's like, oh, so having a sponsor is a real critical piece of information for moving the ball forward. So I reached out to the executive director of CAMF, and her recommendation was to have direct contact with the legislators. So I started to send out cold call emails to numerous legislators.
But you were also, I understand, emailing hundreds of therapists at the same time regarding this issue, trying to get these folks on your team and kind of be some cheerleaders around this.
Yeah, a lot of people responded. I got many eloquent responses from other therapists. Unfortunately, having hundreds of responses from people doesn't do the trick. So I tried to email the legislators. Sheila Kuehl then turned out to say, well, do you know anybody who, in fact, would be interested in authoring this bill? But unfortunately, in our football stadium, the scoreboard clock ran out for that legislative session. But there were important lessons that were learned in this process. And then it was time to regroup and move towards the next offensive attack.
Yeah. So now we're kind of in the fall of 2011. You began to email potential legislative sponsors, and you're talking about, as you reach out to these legislatures, what were some of the things that you became more aware of in refining kind of your introduction and maybe some of the research that you wanted to present to them? How did that begin to shape some of your thinking?
What I did is I would address what legislators had done in the past. And so I would, rather than just having this general email, I would say, well, thank you for your work on this particular issue. After joining with them around their success, say, well, I want you to be aware of this particular issue that's in the law. And I targeted gay legislators, but we still had no sponsor and no yardage gained on our football field.
That's such an important piece you're kind of sharing with us again. That sponsorship is everything, isn't it? What did you understand or learn, Gerry, around the struggle that sponsorship? Were politicians or other organizations reticent for any particular reasons that you learned?
Well, I think they were reticent about it because it's dealing with an issue that some people would view as sensitive, like minors having sex. And would that expose the politician to a backlash that could derail their legislative careers? So that speaks to why legislators were not interested in this bill.
Yeah, that makes sense. I understand, though, that in 2013, we're still kind of moving down the field here. In 2013, the California AamFT, they took a different tact that was important as you continue to move the ball down the field, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is an effort that was a legislative priority for AamFT California, led by Ben Caldwell and Angela Kahn. And they approached the California Department of Consumer Affairs regarding this issue. And in April of 2013, a senior staff attorney issued an opinion. Therapists don't need to report consensual oral or anal sex among minors of similar age as child abuse unless there's evidence of force, undue influence, coercion, and other indicators of abuse. So this definitely moved the football forward, but unfortunately, it didn't change the law.
You're kind of moving this down the field now, but although all this work is being done and articles being written and this issue being named, the law still hadn't changed. And what you said, therapists still maintain that exposure to the liability if they do not follow that mandate to report what the law is currently mandating them to report. So now we're kind of getting into 2012, it sounds like,
Mm-hmm.
and some other things begin to unfold with various districts. Walk us into that part, Gerry.
Well, okay, let's say we're at midfield now,
Okay. All
and
right.
there's very important development that occurred beyond our football bleachers, and that is in December of 2012, Christina Garcia was elected to the California Assembly representing the 58th district. So very importantly, Christina Garcia is a close friend of Cio Hernandez.
Okay.
And Cio was a GGS instructor.
Okay.
She's a good friend and an active collaborator in trying to change the law. So Cio approached Christina Garcia regarding this issue. And although no legislation was advanced in 2013, strategies were being designed for the next offensive drive, with Assemblymember Garcia assuming the role of sponsor, and she's now the quarterback.
You know what I'm struck by, just as we're continuing down the field here, I am struck by the patience and the methodical nature and kind of the widespread level of involvement that's required to do this. We started in 2006. Now we're kind of coming into 2014, and now we have Assemblymember Garcia coming in, and she is looking and providing an opportunity to author a bill here, isn't she?
Absolutely. So she authored Assembly Bill 1505, and we're now in the process, and we wanted to get a letter of support from the Board of Behavioral Sciences. One thing I learned in this process of advocacy is that the BBS's Policy and Advocacy Committee vets bills and then makes recommendations to the full BBS board for their vote. So it would be important in the future to get the bill put on the Policy and Advocacy Committee meeting agenda once the legislative bill analysis is formulated.
Got it. So as that's moving forward, now you're needing to really build up additional cheerleaders and therapists and emails coming in for support. Walk me through what that began to look like to affect this law.
Well, once again, the therapeutic community really responded to my calls for trying to change the law. And so their comments I grouped into several categories. One was with therapeutic trust. Another was the interactions that therapists would have with Children's Protective Services in California, and also the heteronormative bias of the law. And so our team members walked the halls of the Capitol building in Sacramento, visiting assembly members' offices. Legislative committees were addressed, getting advice from Christina Garcia's staffers about what legislators to go to, which ones not to go to, etc.
I was going to ask you, what were some of the takeaway lessons you learned from those visits that you put the boots to the ground to go walk into these offices and talk and share and learn? What were some of the takeaways?
Legislators were very concerned with getting letters of support from professional organizations. So even though I would present them with individual therapist letters, and it certainly didn't hurt the cause, they were going for organizations. So it would be important to reach out to these organizations. Then their boards would need to vote on this, and it would have to happen in a timely manner because there are certain deadlines that are happening in the legislative process.
Got it. What else did you learn? There's just the process of getting the committees to vote, maybe the chair of appropriations. I know that can be a part of the process as well. Walk me through a little bit of that part.
Well, what I'd like to talk about is the process of drafting the bill's language, because that's really critical. And stakeholders can suggest language. The legislator's staff could then tweak that language. And then one of the lessons I came to learn was the Legislative Council, which is a group of attorneys at the state capitol, puts the language together. So they're going to go into the details. They're going to compose the language that pertains to exact sections in the law that need to be amended and added. And then another important learning point for me was the importance of legislative committee votes to move a bill forward in the process of becoming a law. You mentioned the Appropriations Committee.
Yes.
Well, one of the things I learned from the head of a professional organization who I was talking to at a BBS meeting is the Appropriations Committee is the graveyard for unwanted, politically problematic bills.
Oh,
so the Appropriations Committee can serve as cover. If a bill doesn't make it out of a committee, then no legislator is going to be exposed to having to vote for a bill that they think would be politically harmful to them.
Yeah, I get it. Wow. What a thing to learn, huh?
Yeah, that was a big learning point. And so in May of 2014, Assembly Bill 1505 never made it out of the Appropriations Committee. So there's no yardage gain.
So in May of 2014, AB 1505, it never made it out of the Appropriations Committee. And like you're saying, no yardage gained. And so you're having to kind of dust yourself off and rehuddle for another year. How'd you come back?
So in 2015, Assemblymember Garcia put out a revitalized bill, AB 832. And the bill did make it out of the Appropriations Committee. And it moved ahead to a potential floor vote. However, Assemblymember Garcia determined there weren't enough votes to pass the bill. And so the bill was withdrawn from consideration. So then let's fast forward to 2019.
Okay.
We have another bill that she authored, AB 1145. In April of 2019, AB 1145 was not taken up by the Appropriations Committee. So what Assemblymember Garcia did in response to this is the bill was turned into a 2-year bill.
I see.
So, okay, so that's good to know that can happen. Another important learning point.
Got it.
Now, one of the things that was quite important in 2019 was that Gavin Newsom was elected as governor of California. And prior to assuming the governorship, he was the lieutenant governor. And before that, he was the mayor of San Francisco from 2004 to 2011. And in 2004, he was performing gay weddings. So he obviously was a friend of the LGBTQ community.
Okay.
And keep in mind, that's a year before the Supreme Court ruled that same-sex marriages were legal in every state.
Got it.
So now we're moving to 2020. And Assembly Bill 1145 made it out early from the Appropriations Committee.
Very good.
And so there are multiple readings of the bill in the legislature along the way. Our team was moving towards the goal line.
Exactly.
And so one of the things that I learned towards the end of this process, there's a term called engrossment, which means that a bill has been amended. And then enrollment is a term that pertains to a bill that's passed both houses of the legislature in identical form and has been converted into an act to be presented for the governor. So this bill was enrolled and it was presented to the governor in September of 2020. The next part of advocacy that I learned is that there was a need to send letters to the governor to request a signature. So, of course, Assemblymember Garcia did that. Kampf did this. I obtained the governor's email address and I sent him a request as a law and ethics instructor. Finally, on September the 26th, 2020, AB 1145 was signed into law. So we had a touchdown.
Touchdown. Congratulations. The crowd goes wild finally.
Absolutely.
I can hear it.
And one of the things that I just want to make sure gets communicated is that I really appreciate Assemblymember Garcia's steadfast commitment and courage for trying to change the inequity in this law. She didn't shy away from a politically sensitive issue. And over the course of many years, authored multiple bills, as we've heard, until our team achieved the desired result.
That's really good. What a champion to have carrying that ball for you and all the work you guys did. Gerry, we're coming to the close of our podcast here together. Some resources, Gerry, that you have outlined for us. leginfo.legislature.ca.gov. Another one is www.amft CAMFT.org. These are ways that people can get involved with, learn more about the legislative process, bills history, bill analysis, etc. But in closing, I'm just so impressed with what you started back in 2006 and the patience, the relationship building, the learning curve that's just inherent in that process, but really advocating for professionals and the public that we're serving, that you identified there being an inequity in and something putting both them and practitioners at risk in very wrong ways. So in closing, do you have any words of encouragement to those who may want to follow in your advocacy footsteps?
Certainly, I hope that this interview has been instructive in illustrating how the legislative process works. So my advice is be an advocate for change. Your voice matters. Be patient, persistent, and perseverate.
Yeah, I really like that. Be patient, be persistent, and be perseverative. I love that. That's really good. Gerry, my friend, it's been great to be with you today. Thank you for being on our podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity, Graham. I really appreciate it.
It's been great. And to our listeners, we want to thank you for joining us. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Tried Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.